Welcome back to Family Secrets Unveiled, where we delve into the shadows of the past, uncovering truths that refuse to stay buried. What I'm about to share with you today isn't just a story. It's a chilling whisper from the forgotten corners of a life, a sudden, inexplicable mark left on a woman's skin that opened a Pandora's box of secrets. This isn't a tale for the faint of heart, for it speaks of deception woven into the fabric of domestic bliss, of a hidden darkness that can emerge when you least expect it, leaving an indelible scar far beyond the physical. Our story begins in a quiet, unassuming suburb of Portland, Oregon, where the rain often paints the windows with melancholy streaks and life generally ambles along with predictable serenity. This is where Eleanor Vance, a woman whose grace was as timeless as the antique porcelain she collected, lived a life that, from all outward appearances, was idyllic. At 48, Eleanor possessed an understated elegance, her silvering auburn hair often pulled back in a loose, artistic knot, revealing delicate features that spoke of both strength and a quiet introspection. She was a librarian, a curator of stories, and, ironically, about to become the unwilling protagonist of one herself. Her husband, Arthur Vance, a man of 52 with a booming laugh and an endearing habit of wearing argyle sweaters even in summer, was a respected architect. They had built their life together over 2 decades, a solid, comfortable existence filled with shared silences, warm laughter, and the gentle rhythm of routine. Their home, a charming craftsman with a wraparound porch, was a testament to their shared taste and years of careful cultivation, a haven of tranquility. But as we often discover on Family Secrets Unveiled, tranquility can be a deceptive facade, a thin veil over turbulent waters. One ordinary Tuesday, Eleanor woke up feeling different. Not sick, not tired, but an inexplicable sense of disquiet, a feeling akin to static electricity humming just beneath her skin. She dismissed it as a restless night, perhaps a vivid dream she couldn't quite recall. As she went through her morning rituals, the subtle unease persisted. She made her customary Earl Grey tea, the scent of bergamot usually a soothing balm, but today it felt almost acrid. When she stepped into the shower, the warm water cascaded over her, momentarily washing away the lingering sense of dread. It was only when she was drying herself, her terry cloth towel tracing the familiar contours of her body, that she saw it. Just below her right shoulder blade, stretching perhaps 3 inches, was a fresh, angry-looking incision. It wasn't a scratch, not a rash, but a meticulously stitched wound, clean and precise, as if performed by a surgeon. The stitches themselves were a stark, almost violent blue against her pale skin. Her heart, which had been beating a calm, measured rhythm just moments before, now hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. She stared at her reflection, her mind scrambling for an explanation. A fall? An accident in her sleep? But there was no pain, no memory of any incident that could account for such a thing. The scar was undeniable, a raw, livid line across her skin, as if a secret had been carved into her flesh. Panic, cold and sharp, began to creep in. She touched it, tentatively at first, then with more urgency. It was real, raised, and undeniably new. The skin around it was slightly swollen and tender, but surprisingly, not overtly painful. It was the sheer impossibility of it that was truly terrifying. How could a wound, complete with surgical stitches, appear overnight without her knowledge, without a single pang of pain or discomfort to wake her? It was as if she had undergone a secret operation while she slept, a ghostly surgeon performing their grim work without leaving a trace, save for this stark, blue-threaded testament. Arthur was already downstairs, the smell of his freshly brewed coffee mingling with the faint aroma of toast. Eleanor wrapped her bathrobe tighter, a desperate attempt to conceal the shocking discovery, to buy herself time to process this inexplicable horror. She joined him at the breakfast table, her usual cheerful banter replaced by a strained silence. Arthur, engrossed in his morning newspaper, seemed not to notice her unease. He asked about her plans for the day, about a book club meeting, his voice a comforting drone in the otherwise unsettling quiet. Eleanor mumbled noncommittally, her mind racing, trying to construct a rational explanation, any explanation, for the bizarre mark on her back. A medical condition she didn't know about? A sleepwalking incident? But the precision of the stitches, the complete absence of memory, defied all logic. Later that morning, after Arthur had left for his office, Eleanor found herself alone in the quiet house, the scar burning a silent question into her skin. She spent hours in front of the mirror, contorting herself to get a better look, using a second mirror to amplify the view. The stitches were tight, even undeniably professional. This wasn't a haphazard injury. This was deliberate. The implication, chilling and insidious, began to dawn on her. Someone had done this to her. Someone had entered her home, or taken her from it, performed some unknown procedure, and returned her without her ever knowing. But who? And why? The tranquil haven of her home now felt like a cage, its familiar walls whispering secrets she couldn't comprehend. The perfectly manicured garden outside seemed to mock her internal chaos. Eleanor, the rational librarian, felt her world tilt on its axis. The scar wasn't just a physical mark, it was a breach, a violation of her very being, a terrifying testament to a hidden event that threatened to unravel the carefully constructed tapestry of her life. The quiet hum of her suburban existence had been shattered, replaced by the ominous echo of an unknown threat. The question of the scar, with its neat, blue stitches, hung heavy in the air, a silent prelude to a story far darker and more convoluted than anything she had ever read. This inexplicable mark was not an ending, but a terrifying beginning, an uninvited invitation into a mystery that would soon consume her entirely. The following days for Eleanor were a blur of restless nights and anxious days, her mind relentlessly replaying the image of the stitches, searching for answers in the empty spaces of her memory. She tried to maintain a facade of normalcy, particularly around Arthur, but the effort was draining. Every casual touch from him, every shared moment, felt tainted by the secret she carried, both literally and figuratively. She found herself scrutinizing him, his habits, his movements, a subtle distrust beginning to fester in the quiet corners of her mind. It was a terrible thought, but if someone had done this to her, and she hadn't left the house, then the perpetrator had to be someone with access, someone she trusted implicitly. Her attempts to find an explanation led her down increasingly unsettling paths. She secretly researched medical procedures, looking for any condition that might necessitate such a discreet, overnight intervention, but found nothing that fit. The lack of pain, the complete absence of memory, remained the most perplexing and terrifying aspects. She even considered calling the police, but what would she tell them? "I woke up with stitches on my back, and I don't know why." It sounded utterly insane, something out of a pulp fiction novel, not the sober reality of her own life. The fear of being dismissed, of being labeled hysterical, kept her silent. One afternoon, while tidying up Arthur's study, a room she rarely entered, a small, ornate wooden box caught her eye. It was tucked away in the back of a rarely used drawer, almost hidden beneath a pile of old tax documents. It wasn't like Arthur to keep trinkets. He was a man of practicality. Curiosity, a dangerous companion in her current state, compelled her to open it. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, was a single, tarnished silver locket. It was old, intricately engraved with a swirling motif, and felt heavy in her hand, charged with a strange, almost melancholic energy. As she pried open the locket, a wave of disquiet washed over her. Instead of a photograph, it contained 2 tiny, dried flowers, pressed almost to oblivion, and a small, folded piece of paper. With trembling fingers, Eleanor unfolded the brittle paper. The handwriting, delicate and cursive, was unfamiliar, but the words sent a shiver down her spine. "To my dearest Anya, may our secret forever bind us." Anya. The name resonated with a faint, unsettling familiarity, like a distant echo. Who was Anya? And what secret bound her to whom? The locket wasn't hers, and she was almost certain it wasn't Arthur's either, at least not from their shared life. The age of the locket, The style of the writing suggested a past long before she entered Arthur's life. This discovery, seemingly innocuous, cracked open the pristine facade of their marriage. Eleanor had always believed she knew everything about Arthur, or at least, everything that mattered. Now, a shadowy figure named Anya, a secret binding them, materialized from the past, casting a long, dark shadow over their present. Her mind immediately connected it to the scar. Was it a coincidence? Or was there a deeper, more sinister link between this forgotten relic and the inexplicable mark on her skin? The more she thought about it, the more details from her life with Arthur began to take on a new, unsettling light. His occasional late nights, explained as urgent deadlines, now felt like thinly veiled excuses. His sudden, almost obsessive privacy regarding his phone and computer, once dismissed as a quirky habit, now seemed like a deliberate act of concealment. She remembered a faint, almost imperceptible floral scent on his clothes a few months ago, a scent that wasn't hers, and a fleeting, almost imperceptible tension in his shoulders when she once playfully tried to look over his shoulder at his laptop screen. Small, seemingly insignificant details now gathered force, coalescing into a disturbing picture of deception. One evening, Eleanor decided to confront him, albeit subtly. Over dinner, she casually brought up old relationships, testing the waters. "You know, Arthur," she began, her voice carefully neutral, "I was thinking about how little we really know about each other's lives before we met. It's almost as if we sprang into existence the day we said, 'I do.'" Arthur chuckled, a sound that now grated on her nerves. "Well, darling, some things are best left in the past, wouldn't you agree? What matters is now." His eyes, usually warm and open, held a flicker of something she couldn't quite decipher, a subtle hardening, a carefully constructed blankness. That night, as Arthur slept soundly beside her, Eleanor lay awake, the locket now hidden beneath her pillow, a tangible link to a past she was desperate to uncover. The scar on her back throbbed with a phantom ache, mirroring the deep, psychological wound of betrayal that was beginning to open within her. She knew, with an icy certainty, that the locket and the scar were connected, two threads in a tangled web she was now compelled to untangle. This wasn't just about a secret or an old flame. This felt darker, more profound, a secret that had been painstakingly buried, only to be unearthed by an uninvited, surgical mark on her flesh. The comfortable rhythm of their life together had been irrevocably shattered, replaced by the dissonant chords of suspicion and fear. Eleanor was no longer just a librarian. She was a detective in her own life, chasing ghosts that seemed to materialize from the very foundation of her supposed happiness. The quiet suburban haven had become a labyrinth, and she, unknowingly, had just taken the first step into its darkest corridors. Eleanor's quiet investigation intensified, fueled by a potent cocktail of fear and a desperate need for truth. The locket became her silent companion, its tarnished silver a constant reminder of the unknown Anya and the secrets that bound her to Arthur. She began to observe Arthur with a new, clinical eye, noticing subtle shifts in his behavior, a guardedness in his gaze, a slight hesitation before answering seemingly innocuous questions, an increasing frequency of business trips that felt less like work and more like elaborate disappearances. The man she thought she knew, the jovial architect with the booming laugh, was slowly dissolving, replaced by a stranger shrouded in mystery. The scar, too, continued its silent torment. It had begun to heal, the blue stitches now a muted gray, but its presence was a constant, stark reminder of the violation. It felt like a brand, a mark of something deeply unsettling. She even considered going to a doctor, but the thought of explaining its sudden, inexplicable appearance filled her with dread. What if they thought she was delusional? What if the truth was far more sinister than any medical diagnosis? Her breakthrough came not from a dramatic confrontation, but from a mundane task. One rainy afternoon, while cleaning out the attic, a task Arthur usually insisted on doing himself, Eleanor stumbled upon a dusty old trunk, tucked away beneath a pile of discarded photo albums. It was locked, but a quick search yielded a small, ornate key she vaguely remembered seeing Arthur use for an old desk. Her heart hammered as she inserted the key, the click echoing unnaturally loud in the silent attic. Inside, beneath layers of moth-eaten blankets and forgotten memorabilia, lay a collection of letters. They were old, yellowed with age, and tied with a faded silk ribbon. The elegant, cursive handwriting was instantly recognizable from the note in the locket. These were Anya's letters. With trembling hands, Eleanor began to read. The letters painted a vivid, heartbreaking picture. Anya was Arthur's first love, a brilliant, passionate artist he had met in college. Their love affair was intense, all-consuming. But their story was not one of simple romance. The letters spoke of a terrible secret they shared, a burden that bound them, a mistake that could destroy everything. The details were vague, shrouded in poetic, desperate language, but the emotional weight was crushing. Anya's later letters grew increasingly frantic, filled with fear and desperation, mentioning a pact, a solution, and a need to disappear. The last letter, dated almost 25 years ago, was a chilling farewell, speaking of a final sacrifice and an eternal silence. It ended with the same phrase as the locket, "May our secret forever bind us." Eleanor felt a wave of nausea. Anya hadn't simply disappeared from Arthur's life. It seemed she had vanished entirely, under circumstances that were anything but natural. And Arthur, her loving, dependable Arthur, had been complicit in whatever had transpired. The pieces of the puzzle began to violently click into place, forming a horrifying image. The secret in the locket, the sacrifice in the letter, and the scar. The true, horrifying revelation came with the last item in the trunk, a small, leather-bound journal, also belonging to Anya. Unlike the letters, which were filled with veiled references, the journal was brutally frank. It detailed a horrifying event from their college days, a car accident, a late night, a drunken mistake. They had hit someone, a young woman, and in a moment of panicked terror, Arthur, with Anya's reluctant help, had concealed the body, burying it deep in the woods near their university. It was a monstrous act, a desperate attempt to cover up a tragic crime. The journal entries meticulously described their growing paranoia, the suffocating guilt, and Arthur's increasingly manipulative behavior, coercing Anya into silence, reminding her of their shared pact. But the journal also contained a later entry, far more recent, penned in a shaky, desperate hand. Anya hadn't died all those years ago. She had gone into hiding, haunted by her past, but had resurfaced, seeking Arthur, threatening to expose their crime. She had found him, had tried to connect with him, pleading for him to confess and find peace. The final entries in Anya's journal detailed her fear, her growing certainty that Arthur would do anything to protect his meticulously crafted life, even if it meant silencing her permanently. The very last entry, dated just 2 days before Eleanor woke up with the scar, was a single, chilling sentence. "He came to my apartment. He knows I have proof. I think he's going to make me disappear for good this time." Eleanor dropped the journal, her hands trembling so violently she could barely hold it. The implication was stark, sickening. Arthur hadn't just been involved in a hit-and-run. He was a murderer, and Anya had been his latest victim. And the scar, the stitches, it wasn't a random act. It was a warning, a message. Or worse, a part of the horror itself. What had Arthur done to Anya? And what had he done to Eleanor? Was she a pawn in his monstrous game? The precise, surgical nature of the wound, the complete absence of pain, implied something far more insidious than a simple attack. It suggested a terrifying level of control, a chilling precision. That evening, Arthur returned home, oblivious to the earthquake that had just rocked Eleanor's world. He greeted her with his usual boisterous cheer, kissed her on the forehead, and settled in to read his newspaper, completely unaware that the woman sitting across from him now held the terrifying truth of his past, and possibly her own ominous future. Eleanor looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw not the loving husband, but a meticulously constructed facade, a monster hidden beneath argyle sweaters and a charming laugh. The comfort of their home had morphed into a mausoleum of secrets, and she, Eleanor Vance, was trapped within its walls, marked by a scar that was no longer just a mystery, but a terrifying testament to a hidden, deadly truth. Her life, once so predictable and serene, had become a real-life horror story, and she was dangerously close to becoming another one of Arthur's silenced secrets. The weight of Arthur's monstrous secret pressed down on Eleanor, suffocating her. The jovial architect, the man who had shared her life for 2 decades, was revealed to be a cold-blooded killer, a master of deception. Anya's journal lay hidden, a ticking time bomb, and the scar on Eleanor's back pulsed with a phantom ache, a terrifying reminder of her own proximity to Arthur's darkness. She knew she couldn't stay silent, couldn't live another moment under the same roof as him, but confronting him directly felt like signing her own death warrant. He had already silenced Anya. What would stop him from silencing her? Eleanor meticulously planned her escape. She discreetly packed a small bag, gathering Anya's journal and letters, along with a few essentials. Her heart pounded with every creak of the floorboards, every distant sound, convinced Arthur would sense her intentions. The quiet house, once a sanctuary, now felt like a predator, its shadows lurking, its silence amplifying her fear. She arranged for a flight out of state, to a distant relative she hadn't seen in years, making sure to pay in cash and use a burner phone. Every step was calculated, every move shrouded in secrecy. The night she planned to leave, Arthur was unusually jovial, humming a tune as he cooked dinner. The normalcy of it was almost unbearable, a grotesque mockery of their shattered reality. Eleanor forced herself to eat, to engage in polite conversation, her insides churning with a mixture of terror and revulsion. After dinner, as Arthur settled into his armchair, Eleanor made her move. She told him she was going for a walk, needed some fresh air. He nodded, barely looking up from his architectural blueprints, his mind seemingly miles away. As Eleanor slipped out the door, the cool night air was a welcome shock to her system, a momentary reprieve from the stifling tension within the house. She walked quickly, her small bag clutched tightly, not daring to look back. She made it to a local diner, a place Arthur never frequented, and called the police from a payphone. Her voice was shaky but firm as she recounted the horrifying story, the buried body, Anya's letters, the journal, and the inexplicable scar on her own back. She even provided the location mentioned in the journal, the remote woods near their old university campus. The next few days were a blur of police interviews, frantic phone calls, and an overwhelming sense of emotional exhaustion. Detectives, initially skeptical of her wild claims, grew increasingly serious as they investigated. They found Arthur at home, still calmly working on his blueprints, seemingly unfazed. A search of his office and the house revealed nothing. However, the discovery of the locket and the letters, hidden where Eleanor had found them, provided crucial circumstantial evidence. The real breakthrough came when police, acting on Eleanor's information, initiated a thorough search of the remote woods. Days later, they found human remains long buried, along with fragments of clothing that matched Anya's description in the journal. The forensic evidence was undeniable. Arthur Vance was arrested, his perfect life crumbling around him. The news rocked the quiet suburb, shattering the illusion of their idyllic existence. Neighbors whispered, friends expressed disbelief, but the evidence was overwhelming. He was charged with murder, not just of Anya, but also, retroactively, of the young woman from the car accident all those years ago. The discovery of the first victim led to a wider investigation, exposing a monstrous pattern of control and manipulation that had lain dormant for decades. As for Eleanor's scar, the medical examination offered a chilling, albeit partial, explanation. It was indeed a surgical incision, meticulously done. The medical examiner theorized that it was likely a biopsy, or perhaps an attempt to implant or remove a tracking device, given its precise nature and location. The lack of pain suggested a potent sedative had been administered, rendering her unconscious and unaware. The motive, however, remained shrouded in speculation. Was it a perverse warning? A test? Or part of some deeper, more insidious plan connected to Anya and their shared secrets? Perhaps Arthur had been attempting to mark Eleanor, to bind her to his dark past just as he had Anya, a twisted expression of control. The full truth of the scar's origin, the exact purpose of that night, remained a haunting mystery, a final, unsettling echo of Arthur's depravity. Eleanor, though safe, was forever changed. The woman who meticulously curated stories in a library now carried her own harrowing tale, a scar etched not just on her skin, but deep within her soul. She had lost her husband, her home, and the comfortable illusion of her life. But in their place, she had found an undeniable strength, a fierce resilience born from confronting the deepest, darkest corners of human nature. She sold the house, moving to a new city, a new life, far from the shadows of Portland. She never remarried, dedicating her life to supporting victims of domestic violence and uncovering hidden truths, her own story a testament to the fact that evil can wear the most charming masks. The tale of Eleanor Vance and the scar that appeared overnight is a chilling reminder that the greatest dangers often lie hidden in plain sight, behind closed doors, and within the hearts of those we trust most. It's a story about the insidious nature of secrets, how they can fester and corrupt, ultimately leaving indelible marks that extend far beyond the physical. It reminds us that sometimes the most ordinary lives can conceal the most extraordinary, terrifying truths. Thank you for joining us on Family Secrets Unveiled. If this story resonated with you, if it left you pondering the secrets that might lurk beneath the surface, please remember to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next dive into the hidden histories that demand to be brought to light. Until next time, stay vigilant and remember, not all scars are visible.